What if the perfect murder was planned so cleverly that the victim's death was only the beginning? At Blackwater Hall, Sir Julian is found dead in a locked music room. The clock has stopped at 11:17. A poisoned champagne glass lies beside him, and everyone in the house has a motive. But when Hercule Poirot starts asking questions, he discovers something terrifying. Everyone is lying. And the biggest secret isn't who killed Sir Julian, it's why someone wanted the entire house to believe the wrong time of death. Because in this house, the murderer isn't the only one hiding behind a mask. Chapter 1. The stage is set. Blackwater Hall was the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant, refined. Every guest had arrived dressed for a role, and beneath the warm glow of the Art Deco chandeliers, the distinctions between host, widow, heir, physician, secretary, and friend seemed almost too carefully arranged. Outside, rain whispered against the tall windows, while inside came the soft rustle of silk, the faint clink of crystal, and the comforting crackle of a fire that did nothing to warm the uneasiness gathering in the house. Then Sir Julian Vane was found dead. He lay beside the grand piano in the music room, one arm stretched toward the carpet, as though he had fallen in the middle of some unfinished movement. A champagne glass stood upon the polished piano, still containing a small quantity of golden liquid. On the mantelpiece, an antique clock had stopped at precisely 11:17. The police saw a locked room. Hercule Poirot saw a stage, and on that stage, someone was performing innocence. The curtain rises. Captain Arthur Hastings later said that the first thing he remembered was the sound of the clock, not the stopped clock in the music room, but the grandfather clock in the entrance hall, whose solemn chime rolled through Blackwater Hall while Inspector Charles Redding examined the body. It was a deep, melancholy sound that seemed to make the house itself aware of what had happened. Poirot stood beneath the chandelier and listened. The warm drawing-room smelled of furniture wax, lilies, expensive perfume, and Cuban cigar smoke. A silver tray of untouched champagne stood upon a side table. The crystal glasses were smooth and cold beneath the servants' white-gloved hands, while a coffee service sent up the rich aroma of freshly brewed continental coffee. Everything was elegant, everything was orderly, and everything felt wrong. "Observe, mon ami," Poirot said quietly. Hastings looked at him. "What?" Poirot pointed toward the corridor. "The footsteps." Hastings listened. One of the servants was crossing the parquet floor. "What about them?" "They are too careful," Hastings smiled. "You suspect the servants now?" "Mais non, I suspect nobody yet." Poirot's green eyes gleamed. "I observe everybody." Sir Julian Vane had been 70 years old, wealthy, powerful, and not particularly beloved. He had made his fortune in shipping and property, and people who had done business with him often described him as brilliant, ruthless, or both. He had a reputation for remembering every debt and forgiving almost none. 3 days earlier, he had sent invitations to a small gathering at Blackwater Hall. The invitation had promised dinner, music, and an announcement of considerable personal importance. The announcement had never been made. Instead, at 11:25 the previous night, Lady Margaret Vane had discovered her husband dead in the music room. The door had been locked. The windows were secured. The only key had apparently been in Sir Julian's dinner jacket. There was no obvious weapon, and there were no footprints upon the rain-soaked terrace outside. Inspector Redding had spent the morning studying these facts. Poirot had spent the morning studying people. The first person he observed was Lady Margaret Vane. She sat in the drawing-room beside the fire, dressed in black silk. She was 42, beautiful, composed, and very pale. A string of pearls rested against her throat, and a small black purse lay perfectly aligned beside her on the table. She held a handkerchief. She had not used it. Poirot watched her for several seconds. Then she noticed him. "Mr. Poirot, Madame, I understand that you have been asked to investigate." "Yes." Her fingers tightened around the handkerchief. "I want whoever did this to be found. I am sure." She looked directly into his eyes. "My husband was murdered." "So, it appears." There was a pause. Lady Margaret glanced toward the corridor. Poirot noticed. He also noticed that she did not look toward the music room. "Madame," he said, "when you discovered your husband, what did you see?" Her lips parted. "I saw him lying beside the piano, and I thought he was dead." "Before touching him?" "Yes." "Why?" She frowned. Because I knew." Poirot tilted his egg-shaped head. "Ah." Lady Margaret immediately corrected herself. "I mean, anyone would have known." "Perhaps." His voice remained gentle. "But you said something interesting." "What?" "You said you knew." Her expression changed. Only for an instant. Then the mask returned. "Surely you are not suggesting that I knew my husband was dead before I entered the room?" Poirot smiled. "I suggest nothing, madame." He smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve. "I merely listened to the lines spoken by the actors." Lady Margaret stared at him. Poirot moved away. Hastings followed. "You frightened her." "No, you did." Poirot shook his head. "I simply gave the spotlight a little direction." The next actor was Edward Vane, Sir Julian's nephew and heir. Edward was 30, handsome, athletic, and visibly furious. His rough tweed jacket was still damp from the morning, and his shoes bore traces of mud from the grounds. He stood near the window with a glass of champagne. Poirot noticed that his hand was shaking. Edward noticed Poirot looking. "You think I killed him?" "I have not yet decided what I think. Everyone knows I inherit the estate." "Yes, and that makes me the obvious suspect." "Indeed." Edward gave a bitter laugh. "Then perhaps I should save you the trouble. I hated my uncle." Poirot's eyebrows rose. "That is very honest. I have nothing to hide." "Everyone has something to hide, Monsieur Edward." "I don't." Poirot looked at him carefully. Edward's anger was convincing, perhaps too convincing. "Tell me," Poirot said, "where were you at 11:17? "In my room." "Alone?" "Yes." "Doing what?" "Reading." "What book?" Edward hesitated. It was barely a second, but Poirot saw it. "An ordinary question," Edward said. "Of course. I don't remember the title." Poirot nodded. "Interesting." Edward's jaw tightened. "You see, you suspect me because I cannot remember the name of a book." "No, monsieur. I suspect you because you are trying very hard to appear unconcerned about being suspected." Edward's face hardened. Poirot walked away. The third member of the cast was Dr. Lionel Mercer. He was 55, distinguished, silver-haired, and dressed in an immaculate dark suit. He had been Sir Julian's physician for 12 years. His performance was that of the loyal family doctor. Grave, professional, helpful, perhaps too helpful. When Poirot entered the study, Dr. Mercer was already there, examining a collection of medical bottles. "You understand the body?" Poirot asked. "I understand medicine. An important distinction." Dr. Mercer looked irritated. "Sir Julian suffered from a heart condition." "Did he?" "Yes." "Was it serious?" "Not immediately fatal." Poirot glanced toward a small medicine cabinet. "Then why do I smell bitter medicine in the music room?" The doctor froze. Only for a moment. Then he smiled. "Perhaps because Sir Julian was taking medication. Perhaps." Poirot's gaze remained upon him. "You play the role of physician very well, doctor." Mercer's expression cooled. "And what role do you imagine I should play?" "The truth, if possible." Poirot left him there. Finally, there was Clara Bell. Sir Julian's secretary had been in his employment for 8 years. She was 35, dark-haired, quiet, and dressed in a simple navy blue gown. Unlike the others, she seemed almost invisible. Poirot disliked invisible people. They were often the most important actors on the stage. "You knew Sir Julian well?" he asked. "Yes." "Did he trust you?" "Yes." "Did you trust him?" She paused. "No." Poirot smiled. At last, an honest answer. Her eyes lifted to his. He was not a kind man. "Did he have enemies?" "Many." "Did he have friends?" Clara looked toward the drawing room. "Perhaps one." "Miss Evelyn March." "Yes." Poirot turned. Evelyn March sat alone near the fire. She had once been a famous actress. Even at 60, there was something commanding about her presence. Her silver hair was arranged perfectly, her velvet dress caught the firelight, and a faint scent of roses followed her whenever she moved. Poirot approached. "Madame Marque." "Mr. Poirot, you were Sir Julian's oldest friend." "Yes." "Did you love him?" She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Once." Hastings watched Poirot carefully. That answer had not been rehearsed. Poirot seemed to sense it too. "Did you hate him?" "Yes." "And now?" She looked into the fire. "Now I am tired." The flames crackled. For the first time that morning, Poirot said nothing. Then his eyes moved toward the music room. "The stage is very interesting," he murmured. Hastings followed his gaze. "You really think the locked door matters?" "The door matters. The clock, possibly. The champagne, perhaps. The medicine, certainly worth observing." Hastings sighed. "And the people?" Poirot smiled. "Ah, mon ami, the people are everything." He returned to the music room. The body had been removed, but the room remained untouched. The grand piano stood beneath the chandelier. A vase of white lilies rested upon it. The champagne glass remained exactly where it had been discovered. On the mantelpiece, the clock still showed 11:17. Poirot walked slowly around the room. He did not touch anything. He observed the velvet curtains, the cold marble fireplace, the polished piano, the crystal glass, the locked French doors, the carpet. Then he stopped. "Interesting." "What?" Poirot pointed toward the champagne glass. "There is lipstick upon the rim." Hastings bent closer. "Yes." "Lady Margaret wears no lipstick of that color." "Miss March?" "No." "Then Clara?" "No." Hastings looked puzzled. "Who then?" Poirot smiled. "That, mon ami, is the first question." He looked toward the closed door. Somewhere beyond it, a piano key sounded. One single note. Everyone in the house heard it. Hastings turned sharply. "Who is in there?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. The music room was empty. The piano had played itself, or someone wanted them to believe it had. Poirot walked toward the instrument. On the music stand lay a sheet of paper. There was no music written upon it, only 4 words. "The second act begins." Poirot read them twice. Then he smiled. "Bravo." Hastings stared at him. "Bravo?" "Yes." Poirot's fingers lightly touched his magnificent moustache. "The murderer has made one very serious mistake." "What mistake?" "He believes Hercule Poirot is the audience." The rain struck harder against the windows. The chandelier trembled faintly. And somewhere in Blackwater Hall, one of the actors forgot the next line. The stage was set. The players assembled. Let the drama begin. Chapter 2. Enter the players. Morning had become afternoon at Blackwater Hall, but the house had not awakened. The rain continued to fall against the tall windows, turning the gardens beyond them into a grey watercolor. Inside, the warmth of the drawing room fought against the chill that seemed to have settled over the household. The smell of wet wool, coffee, furniture wax, and fading lilies filled the corridors, while somewhere upstairs a door opened and closed with deliberate softness. Poirot stood before the fireplace. He had asked Inspector Redding to bring the principal suspects into the drawing room one at a time. "No accusations," Poirot explained to Hastings. "Not yet." "Then, what are you looking for?" Poirot's green eyes gleamed. "The performance. The first scene belonged to Lady Margaret Vane. She entered wearing a dark silk dress and carrying the same small black purse she had possessed the previous evening. Her face was composed, but there were faint shadows beneath her eyes." Poirot indicated a chair. "Please, sit, madame." She did. He remained standing. "You discovered your husband at 11:25. "Yes." "The clock showed 11:17. "Yes." "Did you notice that immediately?" Lady Margaret hesitated. "No." Poirot tilted his egg-shaped head. "Yet you told Inspector Redding that the clock had stopped." "I must have noticed it afterward." "Of course." The grandfather clock chimed outside. Poirot waited until the sound disappeared. "Tell me about your marriage." Lady Margaret's expression tightened. "What is there to say? Was it happy?" "No." The answer came quickly. Poirot smiled faintly. "Truth often arrives without luggage, madame. It does not need time to unpack." She looked irritated. "My husband was difficult. Did you love him?" "I respected him. That was not my question." Silence. Then she said, "Once." Poirot sat opposite her. "And later?" "I learned what kind of man he was." "Did you wish him dead?" Her eyes widened. "No." "Did you ever imagine his death?" "No." Again the answer was immediate. Too immediate. Poirot watched her hands. The fingers of her right hand were perfectly still. Her left thumb, however, was rubbing repeatedly against the edge of her purse. Fear or anger, perhaps both. "Madame," Poirot said gently, "when you entered the music room, what did you touch?" "Nothing." "Not your husband?" "No." "Not the piano?" "No." "Not the champagne glass?" "Certainly not." Poirot nodded. "Thank you." She rose. At the doorway, he stopped her. "One more question." She turned. "Did Sir Julian have any reason to fear someone staying in this house?" Lady Margaret looked toward the corridor. "Yes." "Who?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. "I don't know." The mask had slipped. Poirot saw it. But he did not pursue her. Not yet. The second scene belonged to Edward Vane. He entered with the confidence of a man determined not to appear nervous. His performance was different from Lady Margaret's. She performed grief. Edward performed anger. He stood rather than sat. "I suppose you want my alibi again?" "Indeed. I was in my bedroom." "Alone?" "Yes." "Reading?" "Yes." "Which book?" Edward's expression darkened. "I told you. I don't remember." Poirot smiled. "Then perhaps we should discuss something else." Edward looked suspicious. "The inheritance?" "Yes." "You think I killed him for money?" "I think money is a motive frequently used by actors because audiences understand it. And you?" "I prefer psychology." Edward laughed bitterly. "My uncle hated me." "Why?" "Because I refused to become like him. Yet you were his heir." "Yes." "Convenient." Edward's eyes flashed. "You think I am guilty?" "I think you are angry." "There is a difference." "Exactly." Poirot leaned forward. "Your anger is genuine. But genuine emotion does not prove innocence." Edward said nothing. Poirot watched him. The actor was losing control. That was interesting. "Where were you at 11:17? "My room." "Did anyone see you?" "No." "Did you hear anything?" Edward hesitated. "Yes." "What?" "A woman's voice." Poirot became still. "What did she say?" "I couldn't hear the words." "Where did it come from?" "The corridor near the music room." "Why did you not mention this before?" Edward's face changed. "I was afraid." Of what? Edward looked toward the closed door. That whoever spoke to my uncle might still be in the house. Poirot stood. Now we approach the interesting part. Edward frowned. What? You have just given me an alibi for someone else. Edward stared at him. I don't understand. Neither does the murderer. The third scene was Dr. Lionel Mercer. He arrived carrying a leather medical case. Poirot immediately noticed it. You brought your instruments. I thought you might require them. I require answers, Doctor. Mercer sat. Poirot remained silent for several seconds. Silence, he had learned, was often more revealing than questions. The doctor shifted. You wanted to speak with me? Yes. About Sir Julian's health. About his death. Mercer's expression hardened. His heart condition was serious. You said yesterday that it was not immediately fatal. Yes. Then what caused his death? I cannot say without an examination. But you already examined him. Briefly. Long enough to conclude he had died. Yes. Poirot nodded. Did you notice anything unusual? No. Nothing? No. Poirot opened a small notebook. Interesting. Mercer leaned forward. What? You said yesterday that Sir Julian's medication might explain the smell in the music room. Yes. Yet you have not asked me what medicine I smelled. The doctor froze. Poirot closed the notebook. You supplied information I had not given you. Mercer's face became pale. For the first time, his performance cracked. I assumed. Assumptions are dangerous. Poirot's voice remained calm, especially when they reveal knowledge. Mercer stood. This is absurd. Perhaps. Poirot smiled. But remember, Doctor, Hercule Poirot is not deceived by such theatre. The fourth scene was Clara Bell. She entered quietly. No perfume. No jewelry, except a small watch. She sat with her hands folded. Poirot liked her immediately, which meant he trusted her not at all. You worked for Sir Julian for 8 years. Yes. You knew his affairs. Many of them. His financial affairs. Yes. His personal affairs. She paused. Some. His secrets. Her eyes lifted. Too many. Poirot studied her. What was he going to announce last night? I don't know. You expect me to believe that? Yes. Why? Because if I knew, I would tell you. Poirot smiled. That is not necessarily true. Clara looked toward the rain-streaked window. Sir Julian had discovered something. What? I don't know. About whom? She hesitated. Someone here. The room seemed to grow colder. Who? I cannot say. Why? Because Sir Julian warned me that if anything happened to him, I should remain silent. Poirot leaned forward. Did he expect to die? No. Then why give such a warning? Clara looked directly at him. Because Sir Julian knew he had enemies. She stood. Poirot stopped her. Miss Bell. Yes? Did Sir Julian write anything last night? She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. What? A letter. To whom? I don't know. Where is it? Her face changed. It was in his desk. Was? It disappeared. Poirot's eyes sharpened. Ah, another mask, another secret, another missing line from the script. Finally came Evelyn March. She entered like an actress, arriving precisely on cue. Her velvet gown rustled softly as she crossed the parquet floor. Her perfume carried the scent of roses, and the firelight caught the silver threads in her hair. She sat without being asked. Poirot smiled. You have played many roles, madame. Indeed. Is this one of them? She smiled. Which role? The grieving friend. Evelyn looked toward the fire. I am grieving. I believe you. Her eyes returned to him. Then why ask? Because grief can be genuine and still conceal something. A long silence followed. Finally she said, Sir Julian and I were once lovers. Hastings shifted uncomfortably. Poirot did not. How long ago? 30 years. And why did it end? He chose money. Did you forgive him? No. Did you hate him? For a long time. And now? She looked toward the music room. Now I hate the fact that I still cared. Poirot's expression softened. For a moment, there was no performance, only pain. Then Evelyn's hand moved toward her handbag. Poirot noticed. Madame. She stopped. May I ask what is inside? No. Then naturally, I must ask why. She looked at him. Because Sir Julian gave it to me. The tension in the room changed instantly. Poirot extended his hand. Slowly, Evelyn opened the handbag. Inside was a folded piece of paper. Poirot took it. The paper contained only one sentence. Trust no one in this house. Hastings stared. Did Sir Julian write that? Evelyn nodded. Poirot examined the handwriting. Yes. He turned the paper over. Nothing. Then he noticed something. A faint reddish mark along the edge. Blood? No, said Evelyn. Poirot brought it closer. Lipstick. Hastings frowned. The same color as the mark on the champagne glass. Poirot smiled. Precisely. The players had entered. Each had performed. Lady Margaret played grief, but feared something. Edward played anger, but had heard a woman's voice. Dr. Mercer played professional detachment, but knew too much about the medicine. Clara played invisibility, but possessed knowledge of Sir Julian's missing letter. And Evelyn March played sorrow, while carrying a secret from the dead man. Poirot returned to the music room. The theatre was beginning to reveal its scenery. On the piano, the champagne glass still waited. He examined the lipstick mark again. Then he looked toward Hastings. Watch this performance carefully, mon ami. What are you thinking? Poirot smiled. That the murderer has made an error. What error? He has allowed us to believe that the locked room is the mystery. And it isn't? No. Poirot's eyes moved toward the stopped clock. The mystery is why everyone wants us to believe the same thing. Outside, thunder rolled across the estate. Inside, the grandfather clock began to strike. 1, 2, 3. Poirot turned toward the sound. Every actor had taken their mark, he murmured. But who played truth? Chapter 3. The First Act. By breakfast, Blackwater Hall had become a house of whispers. The rain had finally weakened, leaving the windows silvered with moisture, and the gardens buried beneath a pale morning mist. Footsteps sounded along the parquet corridors, doors opened and closed, and somewhere in the servants' wing, a cup broke with a sharp little crack. Yet nobody spoke loudly enough to be heard beyond the room in which they stood. The actors were becoming nervous, and nervous actors made mistakes. Poirot sat at the breakfast table before a cup of strong coffee, untouched toast, and a plate of fruit. His magnificent moustache was perfectly arranged, his clothes immaculate, and his expression almost peaceful. Hastings watched him. You have not eaten. I am thinking. You always think. Exactly. Poirot lifted his cup. The psychology. It is everything. Hastings sighed. What have you discovered? Poirot looked toward the doorway. That everybody in this house is lying. Hastings nearly dropped his coffee. Everybody? Mais oui. That cannot be possible. Why not? They are not all lying about the murder. Some lie about love, some about money, some about fear, some because they are ashamed, and one perhaps because he or she is guilty. Poirot set down his cup. That is the difficulty. We must discover which lie belongs to the murderer. Inspector Redding entered, carrying a folder. We have the preliminary medical report. Poirot gestured toward the chair. Tell me. Sir Julian died from a powerful dose of a cardiac medication. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The medicine? Digitalis, apparently. An overdose. Was it in his regular prescription? Yes. Then the murderer needed no unusual poison. Correct. Poirot leaned back. Who had access to the medicine? The doctor, Lady Margaret, the servants, Sir Julian himself, and perhaps the secretary. Redding nodded. She handled his correspondence and appointments. She could have entered his study. Poirot glanced at Hastings. Ah, the stage grows crowded, the inspector continued. There is another matter. The champagne glass contained traces of the same medicine. Hastings looked surprised. So the poison was in the champagne? Not exactly, Redding said. The concentration was too low to explain death, but there was enough to establish contact. Poirot became thoughtful. Contact? Yes, not necessarily consumption. That's what the laboratory suggests. Poirot stood. Then the glass is not the murder weapon. What is it? Poirot smiled. Perhaps the prop. He walked toward the music room. The door remained open. The grand piano waited beneath the chandelier, silent now. The vase of lilies had begun to droop slightly, and their sweet scent mixed with the faint chemical smell of polish and medicine. Poirot studied the piano, then the champagne glass, then the carpet. Tell me, Inspector, who poured the champagne? Sir Julian. Alone? Yes. And who drank from it? We don't know. Poirot's eyes moved toward the lipstick mark. Someone did. Hastings suddenly said, Evelyn. Poirot nodded. She admitted being here with Sir Julian before dinner. Redding looked surprised. She did? No, Poirot said. But she did not deny it. That was enough. The first scene was about to begin again. Evelyn March entered the music room shortly afterward. She stood beneath the chandelier with remarkable dignity. Poirot indicated the piano. Madame, you were here with Sir Julian on the evening of his death. Yes. How long? Perhaps 15 minutes. About what? Hour past. Did you argue? Yes. Did you touch the champagne? She looked at the glass. I may have. Did you drink from it? No. Then why is your lipstick upon the rim? Evelyn's face became pale. I leaned toward the glass. Poirot smiled. An unusual explanation. It is the truth. Perhaps. He stepped closer. Did Sir Julian give you anything? Her hand moved instinctively toward her handbag. Poirot noticed. The note? Yes. Why did he write it? I don't know. Did he say he was afraid? Yes. Of whom? He wouldn't tell me. Poirot watched her. What did he say immediately before you left? Evelyn hesitated. He said, if anything happens to me, they will all pretend they loved me. Hastings looked troubled. Poirot did not. Instead, he asked, did he name anyone? No. Did he say why? He said the truth was hidden in plain sight. Poirot's eyes brightened. Ah, the actress frowned. What does that mean? Poirot turned toward the piano. I am not yet certain, but he was, or almost. After Evelyn left, Poirot examined the piano bench. Underneath it, he discovered a tiny scrap of paper. It had been torn from a larger document. There was only part of a sentence. Transfer the shares to... Hastings stared. Shares? Yes. Whose? Poirot folded the paper. That is what we shall discover. The investigation moved into the study. Sir Julian's desk had been searched thoroughly, but Poirot noticed that one drawer was locked. Redding produced the key. Inside were financial papers, correspondence, and an old photograph. Poirot lifted the photograph. It showed Sir Julian 30 years earlier, beside a young Evelyn March. But there was another person in the photograph, a younger Dr. Mercer. Hastings frowned. I thought Mercer only met Sir Julian 12 years ago. So did I. Poirot examined the photograph. The three people stood outside a theatre in Paris. On the back was a date. Poirot's expression changed. Interesting. The door opened. Dr. Mercer stood there. He saw the photograph. His face lost its color. Poirot held it up. "Doctor." Mercer said nothing. "You told us you met Sir Julian 12 years ago. I was mistaken. By 18 years?" Mercer swallowed. Poirot stepped closer. Now the mask slips. Mercer looked toward the corridor. "You don't understand." "Then explain." "I cannot." "Because you are protecting someone." The doctor remained silent. Poirot's voice became softer. "Or because you are protecting yourself." Mercer finally spoke. "Sir Julian destroyed lives." "Whose?" "Mine." "How?" "He took something from me." "What?" "My future." The doctor turned and left. Poirot watched him go. Hastings shook his head. "This is becoming complicated." "No, mon ami." Poirot looked at the photograph again. "It is becoming clear." He sat beside the fire. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he began to speak. "I have seen this kind of performance before." Hastings knew that tone. Poirot was remembering another case. "Once, I investigated a murder in which a wealthy woman appeared to be devastated by her husband's death. She cried at exactly the right moments. She trembled when questioned. She even collapsed dramatically when the body was described to her. Everyone believed the grief, but there was one detail that disturbed me. When the police told her the victim had been shot, she immediately asked whether the bullet had entered from the front or the back. No one had mentioned where the victim had been wounded. She knew because she had seen the body before anyone else told her those details. Her grief was a performance, but knowledge betrayed her. Poirot looked at Hastings. "That is the danger of acting. The face may be trained, the voice may be trained, the tears may even be trained, but knowledge cannot always be trained. People reveal what they should not know." Hastings nodded slowly. "The body gives them away, sometimes. But more often, the mind does." Poirot looked toward the rain-streaked window. "Human beings wear masks because truth is frightening. A mask protects pride, reputation, love, money, even identity. But every mask creates pressure. The longer it is worn, the harder it becomes to breathe beneath it." He paused. "And when the pressure becomes too great, the mask slips." That afternoon, Poirot gathered the suspects briefly in the drawing room. He placed the photograph upon the table. Nobody spoke. Lady Margaret looked at Dr. Mercer. Edward looked at Clara. Clara looked at Evelyn. Evelyn looked at the photograph. Poirot watched them all. Then he smiled. "Excellent." Hastings whispered. "What?" "The photograph. You've learned something?" "Not from the photograph." Poirot's green eyes moved across the room. "From their faces." Lady Margaret's eyes had gone toward Mercer. Edward had looked at Clara. Clara had looked at Evelyn, and Evelyn had looked at the empty space beside Sir Julian. Each reaction was different. Each reaction told a story. Then Poirot noticed something else. Dr. Mercer was not looking at the photograph anymore. He was looking at Lady Margaret. Fear passed between them. Quickly, silently, Poirot saw it. The first mask had cracked, and behind it was another secret. That evening, as the house settled into darkness, Poirot returned alone to the music room. The chandelier was off. Only the fireplace cast light across the polished piano. He stood before the mantel clock. 11:17. Still frozen, Poirot reached into his pocket and removed his watch. He compared the two times. Then he smiled. "No," he whispered. "The clock did not stop when Sir Julian died." He looked toward the locked French doors. "The clock stopped when someone wanted us to believe he died." A soft sound came from behind him. A floorboard creaked. Poirot turned. The corridor was empty, but upon the piano lay another sheet of paper. 4 words. "You are too late." Poirot picked it up. His expression became grave. "No, mon ami." He looked toward the darkness. Now the real performance begins. The first act concluded. Some masks had cracked. Chapter 4. Rehearsed lines. The following morning, Blackwater Hall felt less like a country house and more like a theatre after the audience has discovered that something has gone terribly wrong. Nobody laughed. Nobody played the piano. Even the servants moved with unusual caution, their footsteps soft against the polished parquet. Rain had returned during the night, tapping steadily against the windows, while the drawing room remained warm from the fire. The scent of coffee, furniture wax, lilies, and expensive perfume lingered in the air. Poirot sat beside the fireplace. Before him lay three objects: the stopped clock, the lipstick-marked champagne glass, and the torn piece of paper from Sir Julian's desk. Hastings looked at them. "You have been staring at those for half an hour." "Because, mon ami, they have been telling me three different stories." "And which story do you believe?" Poirot adjusted his moustache with precision. "None of them." He lifted the clock. "A clock can lie." He touched the champagne glass. "A glass can lie." Then he placed his finger upon the torn paper. "And a document can lie." Hastings frowned. "But objects cannot lie." "Exactly." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "People make them lie." The first person summoned was Lady Margaret. She entered carrying a cup of coffee, her black silk gown rustling softly as she crossed the room. Poirot indicated the chair. "Madame, yesterday you told me that you entered the music room at 11:25. "Yes." "You heard nothing before entering?" "No." "You heard no voice?" "No." "No piano?" "No." Poirot nodded. Yet Edward heard a woman's voice in the corridor. Lady Margaret's fingers tightened around the coffee cup. "I cannot explain what Edward heard." "Perhaps." Poirot leaned forward. "Did you know Dr. Mercer before your marriage?" The cup trembled. "Yes." "How long?" "Several years." "Was he ever your physician?" "Yes." "Was he ever more than your physician?" Lady Margaret's face became pale. "That is a cruel question." "It is not a cruel question, madame. It is a necessary one." She stood abruptly. "I will not discuss this." Poirot did not stop her. As she reached the door, he said quietly, "You have performed grief very convincingly." She turned. "But your fear is genuine." For the first time, her composure broke. She left without answering. Hastings stared at Poirot. "You think she and Mercer were lovers?" "I think there was a relationship." "And Sir Julian knew?" Poirot smiled. "Perhaps that is why he kept secrets." The second scene belonged to Edward. He entered with the same angry confidence as before. Poirot gestured toward the chair. "You told us you heard a woman's voice." "Yes." "Why did you hide that information?" "I was frightened." "Of the murderer?" "Yes." "Or of the woman?" Edward said nothing. Poirot waited. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Edward spoke. "I heard her say, 'You promised.'" Poirot became very still. "Who?" "I don't know." "Was the voice Lady Margaret's?" "No." "Clara's?" "No." "Evelyn's?" Edward hesitated. Poirot smiled. "Ah. It sounded like Miss March. Did you see her?" "No." "Then how do you know?" "I know her voice." Poirot nodded. "Interesting." Edward's jaw tightened. "I am not lying." "No." Poirot's voice softened. "I do not think you are." That seemed to surprise him. "You believe me. I believe that you heard something." Poirot paused. "But I do not yet know what you heard." Edward rose. At the door he turned. Sir Julian had another visitor that night. "Who?" Edward hesitated. "Dr. Mercer." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "When?" "Before dinner." "And why did you not tell us?" Edward's expression hardened. "Because my uncle ordered me to forget it." The door closed. Poirot sat back. "Rehearsed lines," he murmured. Hastings looked at him. "What now?" Now we test the script. Dr. Mercer entered 10 minutes later. He looked exhausted. His suit was immaculate, but his eyes were bloodshot. Poirot motioned toward the chair. "Doctor, Edward says you visited Sir Julian before dinner." Mercer nodded. "Yes." "Why?" "We discussed his health." "Only his health?" "Yes." Poirot smiled. That answer was very quick. "It is the truth." "Truth does not require speed, Doctor." Mercer looked away. Poirot opened his notebook. "You met Sir Julian in Paris in 1938. "Yes." "You knew Evelyn March." "Yes." "You knew Lady Margaret before her marriage." "Yes." "You lied about all three connections." Mercer said nothing. Poirot leaned forward. "What did Sir Julian possess that frightened you?" The doctor looked at him. "You have no idea what you are dealing with." "Then tell me." "I cannot." "Because of Margaret?" Mercer froze. Poirot saw everything. The fear, the guilt, the loyalty. "But not murder. Not yet. Sir Julian threatened to expose us," Mercer said at last. "Why?" "Because he discovered that Margaret had once intended to leave him." Poirot frowned. "That is hardly enough to cause murder." "No. What else?" Mercer closed his eyes. "He had letters." "What letters?" "Letters proving that Margaret and I had been together before she married him." Hastings looked shocked. Poirot remained calm. "Did Sir Julian threaten to make them public?" "Yes." "When?" "The night he died." "Did you argue?" "Yes." "Did you threaten him?" "Yes." "Did you kill him?" "No." Poirot watched his face. This time the answer felt genuine. Mercer was guilty of secrets, not necessarily murder. The performance was cracking, but the final actor remained hidden. Then came Clara Bell. She entered carrying a file. Poirot noticed immediately. "What is that?" "Sir Julian's correspondence." "You searched his office?" "Yes." "Why?" "To find the missing letter." Poirot took the file. "Was it there?" "No." "Then what did you find?" Clara hesitated. "A copy." "Of?" "A letter Sir Julian sent to his solicitor." Poirot opened the file. The letter concerned the transfer of several company shares, but one paragraph had been removed. Poirot examined the torn edge. Then he looked at Clara. "Who tore this?" "I don't know." "Where was it found?" "In the fireplace." "Burned?" "No." "Interesting." Poirot placed the paper on the table. "Someone wanted this letter destroyed." "Yes." "Yet someone removed only one paragraph." Clara nodded. "Why?" Poirot looked toward the fire. "Because the paragraph contained a name." The room became silent. Suddenly, a sharp sound came from the hallway. A door slammed. Hastings rushed toward it. Nobody was there, but on the floor lay a small black envelope. Poirot picked it up. Inside was a single sentence. "Stop asking questions about the clock." Hastings stared. "The murderer knows what you're doing." Poirot smiled. "Of course. You don't seem frightened." "My dear Hastings, fear is useful only when it tells you something." Poirot examined the handwriting. "It tells me the murderer is becoming nervous." He placed the note beside the clock. Then he looked toward the drawing room. "Now we test another performance." That evening, Poirot summoned all 5 suspects. The fire burned brightly. Champagne was poured. Silk rustled. The chandelier tinkled faintly whenever the wind touched the windows. Poirot stood before them. "Mesdames and Monsieur, I have been considering the performances." Nobody spoke. "You have each given me an alibi." He smiled. "Each alibi is excellent." Edward looked irritated. Lady Margaret looked frightened. Mercer remained pale. Clara sat motionless. Evelyn watched Poirot with the calm attention of a professional actress. Poirot continued. "Too excellent." He walked slowly around the room. "Truth does not rehearse." His eyes moved from one face to another. "But your stories have been rehearsed." He stopped behind Lady Margaret. "Madame, You knew about the clock. She turned sharply. No. Poirot smiled. You just contradicted yourself. I said no. Precisely. He lifted the stopped clock. No one had mentioned the clock. Lady Margaret stared at it. Poirot's voice became softer. Yet you knew what I meant. She said nothing. Poirot turned toward Edward. You knew about the voice. Edward swallowed. Toward Dr. Mercer. You knew about Paris. Mercer looked away. Toward Clara. You knew there was a missing letter. Clara's hands tightened. And Madame March. Poirot turned toward Evelyn. You knew Sir Julian was afraid. Evelyn's expression remained calm. Then Poirot smiled. You have all been performing. He placed the clock on the mantelpiece. And now, the script is failing. Suddenly, Evelyn stood. I have had enough. Poirot watched her. Have you? She walked toward the door, then stopped. Sir Julian deserved what happened to him. Everyone stared. Evelyn closed her eyes. For 1 second, the actress disappeared. There was only an old woman, remembering an old wound. Then the mask returned. I did not kill him. She left. Poirot did not follow. Hastings whispered, Why let her go? Because she has just told us something important. What? Poirot looked at the others. The murderer is not the only person who wanted Sir Julian dead. The fire crackled. The rain struck the windows, and somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Poirot smiled. The tension rises, mon ami. He touched the stopped clock. Someone will break character soon. Rehearsed lines faltered. The script was failing. Chapter 5. The mask slips. The storm returned that evening with sudden violence. Rain struck the tall windows of Blackwater Hall like handfuls of thrown gravel, while the wind pressed against the old stone walls and made the velvet curtains tremble. In the drawing room, the fire burned brightly, filling the warm air with the scents of wood smoke, champagne, and expensive perfume, yet nobody seemed comfortable. Poirot had gathered the entire cast together. Lady Margaret sat rigidly beside the fireplace. Edward stood near the window, his arms folded. Dr. Mercer remained in the shadows, while Clara Bell sat perfectly still, with her hands clasped in her lap. Evelyn March occupied the chair nearest the fire, her expression calm, too calm. Poirot stood before them. The performance has gone on long enough. Nobody answered. Poirot's green eyes moved slowly from face to face. Every one of you has lied to me. Lady Margaret looked away. Edward frowned. Dr. Mercer lowered his head. Clara remained expressionless. Only Evelyn smiled. A small, knowing smile. Poirot noticed. Ah, Madame March. What? You are enjoying the performance. Her smile disappeared. No. May we? Poirot walked toward the table. Upon it lay the stopped clock, the champagne glass, the torn letter, and Sir Julian's warning note. The props, Poirot said. Each one has been used to tell us a story. He lifted the clock. This says Sir Julian died at 11:17. He lifted the champagne glass. This suggests a connection with Madame March. Then the letter. This suggests money. Finally the warning note. And this suggests fear. Poirot placed them carefully in a line, but none of them tells us why. Edward stepped forward. So who killed him? Poirot looked at him. That is precisely what we are going to discover. He turned toward Lady Margaret. Madame, you told me you entered the music room at 11:25. Yes. You told me you saw your husband lying beside the piano. Yes. You said you touched nothing. Yes. Poirot's voice became softer. Then why was your fingerprint found upon the champagne glass? Lady Margaret froze. Hastings stared. Inspector Redding looked toward Poirot. I did not tell you that, the inspector said. I know. Poirot smiled. I discovered it this afternoon. Lady Margaret's face drained of color. I touched the glass earlier. When? Before dinner. Why? I had a drink with Sir Julian. You said you never touched it. I was frightened. Of what? She looked at Dr. Mercer. The doctor closed his eyes. Poirot saw the silent exchange. Ah, he said. The mask slips. Lady Margaret suddenly began to cry. But this time there was no performance. Her shoulders shook. Her handkerchief trembled. Her face crumpled with genuine despair. I did not kill him, she whispered. Poirot waited. Then tell us what happened. She looked at Mercer. The doctor stepped forward. I will tell you. Lady Margaret shook her head. No, I must. Mercer turned toward Poirot. Sir Julian knew about us. Hastings stared. We were together before Margaret married him. Poirot nodded. He discovered the relationship. Yes. When? Years ago. And he used it against you. Mercer looked toward the fire. He threatened to destroy Margaret's reputation. He said he would publish the letters and make certain she lost everything. Lady Margaret wiped her eyes. He enjoyed having power over people. Poirot looked at her. And on the night of his death, he summoned me to the music room. Why? He said he had decided to expose everything. And you? I begged him not to. Did you threaten him? Lady Margaret hesitated. Yes. Hastings inhaled sharply. But I left him alive. Poirot nodded. Continue. He poured champagne. We argued. Then Dr. Mercer arrived. Mercer stepped forward. I came because Margaret called me. You argued with Sir Julian. Yes. What happened? He showed us the letters. Mercer's face tightened. He said that by morning, everyone would know. And then? I left. What time? A little after 11. Poirot looked toward the clock. Before 11:17. Yes. Then neither of you killed him. Mercer nodded. Poirot turned toward Evelyn. Now, Madame March. She remained silent. You knew about the affair? Yes. How? Sir Julian told me. Why? Because he wanted me to hate Margaret. Did you? No. Why? Evelyn's voice became bitter. Because Sir Julian had spent his entire life collecting secrets and using them like weapons. Poirot studied her. You hated him? Yes. Did you want him dead? She looked into the fire. Yes. The room fell silent. I wanted him dead, she repeated. But wanting something is not the same as doing it. Poirot nodded. True. Then Evelyn's expression changed. You should ask Clara. Everyone turned. Clara Bell remained motionless. Why Clara? Poirot asked. Evelyn looked directly at her. Because she knew what Sir Julian was going to announce. Clara stood. I did not kill him. Poirot's voice was gentle. I have not accused you. You are thinking it. I am thinking many things. Clara looked toward the door. Then she spoke. Sir Julian discovered that someone had been stealing from his company. Edward's expression changed. Who? Clara looked at him. I don't know. Liar, Edward said. Poirot raised a hand. Let her speak, Clara continued. The thefts had been concealed for years. Money was transferred through several accounts. Sir Julian discovered the pattern only recently. Whose accounts? I never saw the names. Yet you know someone stole. Yes. Why? Because Sir Julian told me. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And the missing letter, Clara swallowed. It contained the name. Whose name? She looked toward Edward. The young man stepped backward. No, Clara whispered. Yours. Edward's face went white. Hastings stared. You? Edward shook his head. It wasn't me. Clara looked at Poirot. Sir Julian believed Edward had taken money from the company. Edward's anger exploded. He was lying. Then why did you never tell us? Because I knew nobody would believe me. Poirot stepped closer. Did you steal the money? No. Did Sir Julian accuse you? Yes. Did you hate him for it? Yes. Did you kill him? Edward looked directly into Poirot's eyes. No. Poirot studied him. The answer was immediate, but unlike before, there was no performance, only humiliation. Poirot turned away. Interesting. Hastings whispered, "You believe him?" "I believe he believes what he is saying." "That isn't the same thing." "No." Poirot touched his moustache. "It is not." Suddenly Clara spoke. "There is something else." Everyone looked at her. The missing letter wasn't destroyed. Poirot turned. "Where is it?" "I don't know. You just said it wasn't destroyed. Because I saw it." "When?" "Last night." "Where?" Clara's face became pale. "In Sir Julian's study." "Who had it?" She hesitated. "Lady Margaret." Everyone turned. Lady Margaret stared at her. "No," Clara continued. "She was holding the letter." Poirot looked at Lady Margaret. "Madame?" Lady Margaret said nothing. Poirot approached her. "Did you take the letter?" "No." "Did you see it?" "Yes." "Where is it now?" "I don't know." Poirot watched her carefully. "Then we have another performance." Lady Margaret suddenly reached into her handbag. Hastings stepped forward, but she removed only a folded piece of paper. She placed it on the table. I took it. Poirot opened it. The missing paragraph was there. He read it silently. Then his expression changed. The room seemed to shrink around him. "What does it say?" Hastings asked. Poirot looked up. "It says Edward did not steal the money." Edward stared at him. "What?" Poirot continued reading. "Sir Julian discovered that the money was being transferred by someone inside the company." He turned the page. "And the account belonged to—" He stopped. His eyes moved toward Clara, then toward Dr. Mercer, then finally toward Evelyn. "No," Poirot murmured. Hastings looked confused. "Who?" Poirot folded the letter. "That is not the important question." "What is?" Poirot's voice became very quiet. "The important question is why the murderer wanted this letter to disappear." Suddenly Evelyn rose. Her face had changed. For the first time, she looked frightened. Poirot saw it. "You know." She shook her head. "No." "You know who the letter concerns." "No." "Then why are you afraid?" She said nothing. Poirot stepped toward her. "Madame March." Her hands began to tremble. "I did not mean for him to die." Poirot stopped. The room became completely silent. Hastings stared. Inspector Redding reached for his notebook. Poirot spoke softly. "Tell us what you did." Evelyn's face collapsed. "I went to the music room." "When?" 11:15. "Why?" "To confront him." "About what?" "My daughter." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Your daughter?" "She was Sir Julian's daughter." A gasp passed through the room. Evelyn began to cry. Real tears, not theatrical ones. He abandoned her. He refused to acknowledge her. He destroyed her life. Poirot watched her carefully. "Did you poison him?" "No." "Did you touch his drink?" "Yes." "When?" "I took the glass from him." "Why?" "Because he had threatened me." "What did you do?" "I threw the champagne into the fireplace." Hastings stared. "But the glass was found beside the piano." Evelyn looked up. "I did not put it there." Poirot became very still. The mystery had changed. The glass had been moved. The clock had been manipulated. The letter had been hidden, and someone had carefully arranged the scene after Evelyn left. Poirot turned toward the door. The mask has fallen. He looked at every suspect, but beneath it, we have discovered another face. No one moved. The rain hammered against the windows. Poirot's voice became almost a whisper, and that face belongs to someone who has not yet spoken. The mask had fallen. Beneath it, the true face at last. Chapter 6. Behind the Curtain. Morning came slowly to Blackwater Hall. The storm had passed, but the gardens remained soaked beneath a pale grey sky. Drops of water clung to the bare branches, and the terrace stones shone like polished marble. Inside, the house was strangely warm. the fire crackling in the drawing room, while the smell of strong coffee, damp wool, furniture wax, and fading roses drifted through the corridors. Nobody spoke of breakfast. Nobody spoke of sleep. Everyone was thinking about Evelyn March's confession. Poirot stood beside the window, looking toward the terrace. Hastings approached him. She admitted being in the music room at 11:15. Yes, she touched the champagne glass. Yes, she hated Sir Julian. Yes, then surely. Poirot turned. No. Hastings frowned. You don't believe she killed him? I believe she wanted him dead. That isn't the same thing. Exactly. Poirot's eyes moved toward the music room. Theatre, mon ami. You must learn to distinguish the actor from the role. He paused. Evelyn played the part of the bitter woman seeking revenge, but the performance was too obvious. So she was framed? Perhaps? By whom? Poirot smiled faintly. That is the curtain behind which we must now look. He returned to the drawing room. Evelyn March sat alone beside the fire. Her composure had disappeared. She looked older than she had the previous evening, her silver hair slightly disordered, her velvet dress creased from a sleepless night. Poirot sat opposite her. Madame. She raised her eyes. I have told you everything. Not everything. What more is there? Your daughter. Evelyn closed her eyes. For several seconds, only the fire spoke. My daughter's name was Marianne. Was? She died 6 years ago. How? Evelyn looked toward the flames. Suicide. Hastings lowered his gaze. Poirot remained silent. She had spent her entire life believing Sir Julian would eventually acknowledge her. Evelyn continued. He promised he would. Again and again. He never did. Did she know the truth? She knew enough. Did Sir Julian know she was his daughter? Yes. And did he refuse her? Yes. Poirot leaned forward. Why did you never expose him? Evelyn smiled sadly. Because he had more power than I did. Money? Money. Influence. Friends. Lawyers. She looked at Poirot. You have no idea how easily a powerful man can make a woman appear unstable. Poirot's expression softened. Unfortunately, madame, I have seen it before. Evelyn continued. The night Marianne died, Sir Julian sent me a letter. He said he regretted nothing. Poirot's eyes sharpened. Do you still have that letter? No. Why? I burned it. Poirot nodded. Then your motive was revenge. Yes. But you did not kill him. No. Why? Evelyn looked at him. Because when I confronted him, he was already afraid. Afraid of whom? I don't know. Poirot became very still. What exactly did he say? He said, It isn't you I fear, Evelyn. It is the person behind the curtain. Hastings looked puzzled. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The person behind the curtain. Evelyn nodded. I thought he was being theatrical. Sir Julian was not known for modesty. No, but perhaps this time he was being precise. Poirot stood. He walked toward the curtains. The velvet fabric was heavy beneath his fingers. He drew it aside. Behind it was nothing but the dark window. Yet the phrase remained in his mind. Behind the curtain, behind the role, behind the lie. Someone had been watching the performance. Poirot summoned Clara Bell. She entered carrying another folder. Poirot looked at her. Miss Bell, you knew about Marianne. Clara stopped. Yes. How? Sir Julian told me. When? 2 weeks ago. Why? He wanted me to prepare a legal document. What document? A declaration. Declaring Marianne his daughter. Yes. Poirot's eyes narrowed, but he refused to sign it. He changed his mind. Why? Clara hesitated. Someone threatened him. Who? I don't know. Poirot stepped closer. Miss Bell, you are an excellent secretary. She looked uncertain. You remember everything. Yes. You know every appointment, every letter, every financial transfer. Yes. You know which secrets belong to which person. Clara looked at the floor. Yes. Then you know who stole the company money. She did not answer. Poirot waited. Finally, she whispered, Yes. Who? Sir Julian's solicitor. Hastings looked surprised. The solicitor? Mr. Gerald Pike. Poirot frowned. Why was his name not mentioned before? Because Sir Julian suspected him, but had no proof. And the missing letter? It named Pike. Poirot looked toward the fireplace. Then Pike had a motive. He had access. Could he have entered the music room? No. Why? He left Blackwater Hall at 10:30. Poirot smiled. Did he? Clara looked at him. You think he lied? I think everyone lies. Clara lowered her voice. There is something else. Go on. Pike was not the only person stealing. Poirot became still. Who else? Clara looked toward the door. Someone inside this house. The door opened. Edward Vane stood there. He had heard enough. Who? Clara turned pale. I don't know. Edward looked at Poirot. You think it was me? Poirot shook his head. No. Edward's anger softened into confusion. Then who? That is the question. Poirot returned to the music room. He examined the piano again. The champagne glass was still there. The clock still showed 11:17. The French doors remained locked. But something had changed. The flowers. Poirot leaned over the vase of lilies. One stem was broken. He touched it. Interesting. Hastings frowned. What? This flower was not broken yesterday. How can you know? Because I observed it. Poirot examined the broken stem. There was a tiny smear of red upon it. Not blood. Lipstick. He looked toward the doorway. Madame March was here. Yes. But she did not break the flower. How do you know? Poirot smiled. Because her lipstick is the wrong shade. Hastings stared. You are certain? Mais oui. Poirot took a small handkerchief from his pocket. The stain was dark crimson. Evelyn's lipstick was rose. Lady Margaret's was pale. Clara wore none. Poirot's eyes moved toward the hall. Then whose? A sound came from behind them. Lady Margaret stood in the doorway. Her face was white. Poirot looked at her. Madame. She stared at the flower, then at him. You found it. Yes. She closed her eyes. I thought nobody would notice. Poirot approached her. What happened? I came here after Evelyn left. When? I don't know. Why? To speak with Sir Julian. He was dead. Yes. You knew. I saw him. Poirot watched her carefully. Did you touch the body? No. Did you touch the flower? Yes. Why? She began to tremble. Because I was looking for something. What? A letter. The same letter we found? No. Poirot's eyes narrowed. What letter? Lady Margaret reached into her handbag. She produced a small envelope. Poirot took it. It was sealed. The handwriting belonged to Sir Julian. The name on the front was, For Dr. Lionel Mercer. Poirot looked at Lady Margaret. You never gave this to him. No. Why? Because I was afraid. Of what? She whispered. It contains the truth about what happened before my marriage. Poirot opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet. He read it, then read it again. His expression became grave. Hastings asked, What does it say? Poirot handed him the paper. Hastings read aloud, Lionel, if Margaret ever learns the truth about Marianne, she will understand why I could never acknowledge her. He stopped. What does that mean? Poirot looked toward the window. Theatre, he murmured. Always theatre. Then another voice came from the doorway. Dr. Mercer, you should not have read that. Poirot turned. The doctor's face was no longer pale. It was furious. What did Sir Julian know about Marianne? Mercer said nothing. Doctor, still nothing. Poirot stepped closer. Was Marianne your daughter? Mercer's face collapsed. No. Then whose? The doctor looked at Lady Margaret. She began to cry. Poirot understood. Not all at once, but enough. The hidden relationships were beginning to emerge. Marianne had been Evelyn's daughter. Sir Julian was her father, but someone else had been involved in the secret. Someone whose identity could destroy more than one life. Mercer finally whispered, Marianne was Margaret's daughter. The room went silent. Hastings stared. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Impossible. No, said Mercer. Not impossible. He looked toward Lady Margaret. Hidden. Lady Margaret covered her face. Poirot slowly pieced together the fragments. Marianne had not simply been Sir Julian's illegitimate daughter. She had been born from a secret that connected Evelyn, Margaret, Mercer, and Sir Julian. The entire cast had been standing upon the same stage for decades. They had merely been playing different roles. Poirot turned toward the dark window. Now we are behind the curtain. He looked back at them. And behind every curtain, a secret. His voice became quiet. Behind every secret, a motive. Behind every curtain, a secret. Every secret, a motive. Chapter 7. The Final Act. By 7 o'clock that evening, the cast of Blackwater Hall had assembled. The drawing room was transformed. The fire burned beneath the marble mantel, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Crystal glasses stood untouched upon the table, and the chandelier above them gave off a warm, golden light. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the terrace black and shining beneath the moon. Poirot stood at the center of the room. He had asked Inspector Redding to remain by the door. Nobody was permitted to leave. Lady Margaret sat beside Dr. Mercer. Edward stood near the fireplace. Clara Bell sat opposite them. Evelyn March remained in her velvet chair, her face exhausted. Poirot looked at them all. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, the final act has arrived. Nobody spoke. Poirot slowly walked toward the table. You have each performed for me. He touched the stopped clock, some truthfully. He touched the champagne glass, some deceptively, then the letter, and some with such magnificent skill that I confess for a moment, even Hercule Poirot was impressed. Evelyn looked at him. You know who killed him? Poirot smiled. Yes. The room became completely silent. Hastings stood near the door, watching his friend. Poirot drew himself to his full height. Let us review the performances, shall we? He turned toward Lady Margaret. Madam, you played the grieving widow. Lady Margaret lowered her eyes. You discovered your husband. You lied about what you touched. You concealed your relationship with Dr. Mercer. You removed a letter from the study. Lady Margaret whispered, I did not kill him. No. Poirot nodded. But you had motive. He looked at the others. She hated Sir Julian because he controlled her life. He threatened to expose her past. She argued with him shortly before his death. Lady Margaret's eyes filled with tears. But when she left the music room, Sir Julian was alive. Poirot paused. She is not our murderer. Then he turned toward Edward. Edward Vane. Edward straightened. You played the angry heir. Poirot's voice became sharper. You hated Sir Julian. You expected to inherit his fortune. You lied about hearing the woman's voice. Edward looked at him. I told you the truth. Eventually. Poirot smiled. You were hiding something. Yes. Your uncle had accused you of stealing from his company. Edward's jaw tightened. But you did not steal the money. Poirot held up the missing paragraph from the letter. The evidence proves this. Edward looked stunned. Sir Julian had intended to clear his name. You had motive, Poirot continued, but not guilt. Edward slowly sat down. Poirot turned to Dr. Mercer. Doctor. Mercer remained still. You played the loyal physician. Poirot's expression hardened. But you knew more than you admitted. You knew Sir Julian before Margaret married him. You loved Margaret. You helped conceal the truth about Marianne. Mercer closed his eyes. Yes. You hated Sir Julian. Yes. You threatened him. Yes. You were in the house before his death. Yes. Poirot stepped closer. Yet you did not kill him. Mercer opened his eyes. How can you be certain? Because when you lied, Doctor, you lied to protect Margaret. Poirot's voice softened. Not yourself. Mercer lowered his head. Poirot turned toward Clara Bell. And you, Miss Bell. Clara looked at him. You performed invisibility. I did what I had to do. You knew every secret in this house. You knew about the company thefts. You knew about Marianne. You knew about the missing letter. Yes. And you lied about what you knew. Yes. Why? Clara looked toward Edward. To protect him. Edward stared at her. Poirot nodded. You had access to everything. Yes. You could have poisoned Sir Julian. Yes. You could have altered the documents. Yes. You could even have entered the music room unnoticed. Clara looked at him. But I did not kill him. Poirot smiled. No. He turned away. Your performance was convincing. Clara whispered. Then who? Poirot did not answer immediately. He walked toward Evelyn March. And now we come to our leading performer. Evelyn looked at him. Poirot's voice became almost gentle. Madame March, you played the role of the bitter former lover. Evelyn said nothing. You wanted Sir Julian dead. Yes. You confronted him at 11:15. Yes. You handled the champagne glass. Yes. You threatened him. Yes. You left him alive. Yes. Poirot nodded. And then someone entered. Evelyn's eyes widened. Yes. Who? I don't know. Poirot looked toward the others. Perhaps you do. He turned to Dr. Mercer. Doctor, when did you discover Marianne was Margaret's daughter? Mercer hesitated. Years ago. And Sir Julian? He knew. Did Evelyn know? No. Evelyn stared. What? Mercer looked at her. I am sorry. Evelyn rose. You knew? Mercer nodded. Marianne was born after Margaret became involved with me. Sir Julian believed she was his daughter, but the truth was different. Evelyn's face became white. She was mine? No. Mercer looked at her. She was yours by birth, but Margaret raised her. Evelyn stared at Lady Margaret. Lady Margaret began to cry. Poirot watched the three women and the doctor. The entire history of the house had been built upon one enormous deception. But it was not the murder. Poirot turned toward the mantel. The murderer made one error. Hastings leaned forward. What error? Poirot lifted the stopped clock. The clock. He turned to the group. Everyone assumed Sir Julian died at 11:17. He shook his head. He did not. Redding stepped forward. The medical evidence suggested. The medical evidence gives us a window. Poirot smiled. The clock was stopped deliberately. Why? To create an alibi. Poirot looked toward Edward. Edward said he heard a woman's voice. Then toward Evelyn. Evelyn admitted being there. Then toward Margaret. Margaret admitted visiting afterward. Then Mercer. And Mercer had his own secret meeting. Poirot spread his hands. Too many people. He looked at Clara. And that is exactly what the murderer wanted. Clara's face changed. Poirot saw it. The murder occurred later than everyone believed. Clara stood. No. Poirot's eyes hardened. You know. I don't. Then why are you afraid? She stepped backward. Poirot continued. The clock was stopped at 11:17 because the murderer needed everyone to focus upon that moment. He pointed toward the champagne glass. The glass was moved. Then the lilies. The flower was broken later. Then the letter. The evidence was rearranged. He turned toward Clara. Someone remained behind. Clara shook her head. No. Poirot stepped closer. After Evelyn left, you entered the music room. Clara's face collapsed. I only wanted the letter. Exactly. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. She began to cry. I went there to find the letter proving Edward was innocent. Poirot nodded. And Sir Julian was alive. Clara froze. Yes. What happened? He confronted me. Why? He knew I had discovered the theft. Whose theft? Clara whispered. His solicitor's. Poirot waited. Gerald Pike. Yes. Then why did Sir Julian die? Clara covered her face. I didn't kill him. Poirot's voice became very quiet. Then who did? Clara looked toward the door. Nobody moved. Finally, she whispered, Gerald Pike. Poirot nodded. Yes. Hastings stared. But Pike wasn't here. Poirot smiled. Exactly. He turned toward Inspector Redding. Inspector, check the servants' records. Redding opened his notebook. Poirot continued. Pike left the house at 10:30. That is what everyone believed. But he returned, Hastings said. Precisely. Poirot's eyes gleamed. He returned through the old service entrance. Clara stared. I saw him. Poirot nodded. You saw him, but you were frightened. Yes, and you kept silent because you thought he would kill Edward. Clara nodded. Poirot turned toward the assembled cast. Pike entered the music room after Evelyn left. He confronted Sir Julian. Sir Julian had discovered the theft and intended to expose him. Poirot lifted the medicine bottle. Pike knew Sir Julian's medication. He pointed toward the champagne. He contaminated the glass. Then the clock. He stopped it at 11:17. Then the letter. He removed the paragraph naming himself. And the lipstick? Hastings asked. Poirot smiled. A prop. Evelyn's lipstick had already been upon the glass. Pike used it to make suspicion fall upon her. He understood the theatre, Poirot said. He knew everyone had secrets. He knew everyone had motive. He merely arranged their performances around his crime. Poirot turned toward the doorway. Gerald Pike. The solicitor entered under the escort of 2 police officers. His face was expressionless. Poirot smiled. You gave the most convincing performance of all. Pike said nothing. The shock, the concern, the helpful cooperation. Poirot approached him. Magnifique. Then his expression hardened. But you made one error. Pike's eyes narrowed. When you discussed Sir Julian's death, you said the clock had stopped before you entered the house. Pike remained silent. But nobody had told you the clock had stopped. The room went still. Pike's mask disappeared. Poirot continued. You knew because you stopped it. Pike's shoulders sagged. Inspector Redding stepped forward. Pike whispered, You have no proof. Poirot smiled. The proof is in your performance. He pointed toward Pike's hands. You handled the medicine bottle. The residue remains beneath your fingernail. Pike looked down instinctively. Poirot's smile widened. Ah! The murderer had forgotten his line. The performance is over. Pike was arrested. Nobody spoke as the officers led him away. Poirot returned to the center of the room. He looked at the exhausted faces before him. Every actor in this drama had a secret. He paused. But only one secret required murder. Outside, the clouds parted. Moonlight spilled across the terrace. Poirot looked toward the darkened music room. The locked room was never the mystery. Hastings asked, Then what was? Poirot smiled. The human heart. He touched his moustache. Everyone performed innocence, but the murderer performed truth. The final act concluded. Only truth survived the curtain call. Chapter 8. Curtain Call. The arrest of Gerald Pike changed the atmosphere of Blackwater Hall immediately. For 3 days, the house had seemed to hold its breath, but now the breath came out in a long, exhausted sigh. The servants moved more freely through the corridors. Doors were opened without hesitation, and for the first time since Sir Julian's death, someone played the piano. Only a few notes. Then silence. Outside, The clouds had cleared, leaving the gardens washed clean beneath a cold morning sun. The terrace stones were still damp, and the air carried the fresh smell of rain, wet earth, and roses from the hothouse. Inside, the drawing room remained warm, with the fire crackling beneath the marble mantel and the scent of strong coffee, replacing the stale perfume of fear. Poirot stood near the window. He watched as Inspector Redding escorted Gerald Pike across the terrace toward the waiting police car. Pike no longer looked like the confident solicitor who had entered Blackwater Hall days earlier. His shoulders were bent, his face was grey. The performance had ended. There would be no applause, only justice. Hastings joined Poirot. "You were right about him." Poirot smiled. "Of course. You say that as though it were obvious. Nothing is obvious, mon ami. It is merely made to appear obvious by the person who wishes you to believe it." Hastings looked toward the departing car. Pike used everyone's secrets against them. Yes, he knew that Margaret and Mercer had their affair. He knew about Evelyn's daughter. He knew Edward had been accused of stealing money. He knew Clara would protect Edward. Poirot nodded, and he understood human psychology. That made him dangerous. Very. Poirot turned from the window. But his greatest mistake was believing that because people had secrets, they would behave predictably. Hastings frowned. "I don't understand." Pike believed Evelyn would look guilty because she hated Sir Julian. He believed Margaret would hide the affair. He believed Mercer would protect her. He believed Clara would remain silent. Poirot's green eyes gleamed. He understood their masks, but not what was underneath them. Precisely. The first person to come to Poirot that morning was Lady Margaret. She wore a simple dark dress without jewellery. The woman who had entered Blackwater Hall as Sir Julian's elegant widow seemed to have disappeared. In her place stood someone tired and uncertain, as though she had finally been relieved of a role she had played for too many years. "Mr. Poirot," she said. "Madame." He placed his hand upon its polished surface. Hastings joined him. "Funny," Hastings said. "It looks ordinary now. That is the strange thing about crime." "What?" "The setting remains." Poirot looked around. The same walls, the same furniture, the same doors. But everything feels different, because we know what happened here. Poirot walked toward the mantel. He lifted the clock. Inspector Redding had already repaired it. Its hands now moved normally. Tick, tick, tick. Poirot listened. "A clock again," he said. Hastings smiled. "Just a clock. Exactly." They stood silently for a moment. Then Hastings asked, "What happens to Blackwater Hall?" Poirot looked toward the windows. "Life happens." "What does that mean?" "The setting has changed." Poirot gestured toward the empty room. First it was an elegant stage, then a crime scene, then a theater of revelation. He smiled. "Now it is simply a house. Outside, sunlight touched the wet garden. The transformation was complete. The elegant stage had become a place of tragedy. The tragedy had become a theater of truth, and the theater had finally become peaceful. Hastings looked at Poirot. "You enjoyed it, didn't you?" Poirot raised an eyebrow. "Enjoyed murder?" "No, the investigation." Poirot smiled. "Ah, that is different." He adjusted his moustache. "The human mind is fascinating." They walked toward the entrance. At the doorway, Poirot stopped. He looked back one final time. The piano, the fireplace, the clock, the windows, all silent, all ordinary. The curtain had fallen. There was no applause for this performance, only justice. Chapter 9. The Last Secret. 3 weeks had passed since Gerald Pike was arrested. Blackwater Hall had returned to its quiet routine, but the house no longer felt haunted by fear. The servants laughed again. The windows were opened during the day. The gardens were being restored after the storm, and the music room had been cleaned until there was scarcely a trace of the tragedy that had occurred there. Yet Hercule Poirot remained. Hastings found him one morning sitting beneath the old oak tree on the terrace, examining a letter. "You are still here?" Poirot looked up. "Temporarily. I thought the case was finished." "The murder is finished." Hastings frowned. "That sounds ominous." Poirot folded the letter. "There is always a difference between a solved crime and a finished story." "What story remains?" Poirot smiled. "That, my friend, is why I have asked you to sit down." Hastings obeyed. Poirot handed him the letter. It was written in Sir Julian's handwriting. Hastings read it carefully. The letter contained no confession, no accusation, and no mention of Gerald Pike. Instead, it contained several names. At the bottom was a single sentence. "There is one truth I have never told anyone." Hastings looked up. "This is new." "Yes." "When did you find it?" "Last night." "Where?" "Inside the piano." Hastings stared. "You searched that piano before?" "Indeed." "And you found nothing?" "Because I was searching for evidence of murder." Poirot smiled. "The letter was not hidden from the murderer. Then who was it hidden from?" "Everyone." Hastings read the final sentence again. "What truth?" Poirot stood. "That is what we must discover." They returned to the music room. The piano stood exactly where it had stood on the night of the murder. Poirot opened the lid. Inside the instrument, everything was clean. He pointed to the inner wooden panel. Here, a tiny mark had been scratched into the wood. 3 letters. M-E-M. Hastings frowned. "What does that mean?" "I don't know." "You really don't?" Poirot smiled. "My dear Hastings, even Hercule Poirot is occasionally allowed to discover something." He examined the mark. Then his expression changed. M-E-M. He repeated the letters. "Marianne Evelyn Mercer." Hastings stared. "Marianne?" "Yes." "Mercer was her father." "No." Poirot looked at him. "Remember what we learned. Marianne was Evelyn's daughter, but Lady Margaret raised her. Then why Mercer?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Because the initials may not be a name." He returned to the letter. There were several lines that seemed ordinary, but one phrase had been underlined. "The truth belongs to the living, not the dead." Poirot read it twice. Then he smiled. "Ah, what?" He knew. Knew what? That Marianne was not the secret. Hastings stared. Then what was? Poirot closed the letter. Her birth. They returned to the drawing room. Lady Margaret was there, arranging flowers. Poirot approached her. "Madame, may I ask you one final question?" She smiled faintly. "After everything, I suppose I cannot refuse. Who was Marianne's father?" Lady Margaret froze. "You already know. I know what everyone believed." She put down the flowers. "What do you want to know?" "The truth." She looked toward the window. "Sir Julian was not her father." "I know." "Evelyn was her mother." "I know." "Then you know enough." Poirot shook his head. "No." Lady Margaret closed her eyes. "Marianne was born in 1939. "Yes." "Evelyn was unmarried." "Yes." "She could not keep the child." "So you adopted her?" "Not officially." Poirot waited. Lady Margaret whispered, "Marianne was my sister's child." Hastings, who had been standing behind Poirot, stared. Poirot remained perfectly still. "Your sister?" "Yes." "What was her name?" "Evelyn." Poirot's eyes sharpened. "Then Evelyn March was not Marianne's mother?" Lady Margaret shook her head. "No." "Then why did she claim to be?" "Because she believed it." Poirot stepped closer. "Explain." Lady Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Evelyn had a daughter. Her child died shortly after birth." Poirot said nothing. Her grief destroyed her. When my sister's child was born, Evelyn believed the baby was hers. Hastings looked confused. But how? She was ill. Poirot nodded slowly. A tragedy of identity. Yes. Who was Marianne's real mother? Lady Margaret looked at him. My sister. And her father. Lady Margaret hesitated. Poirot waited. Finally she whispered, Dr. Lionel Mercer. Silence. Everything seemed to stop. Hastings stared. But Mercer said, he lied. Poirot's face became grave. Why? Because Sir Julian knew, Lady Margaret continued. Mercer and my sister had been together. When the child was born, Sir Julian discovered the affair. He threatened to expose everyone. Poirot suddenly understood the entire architecture of the deception. Mercer had loved Margaret. Evelyn had believed Marianne was her daughter. Sir Julian had known the truth. And all of them had spent decades protecting different versions of the same lie. But why did Sir Julian want to reveal it now? Poirot asked. Lady Margaret shook her head. I don't know. Poirot looked toward the fireplace. Perhaps he never intended to reveal it. What do you mean? Poirot returned to the letter. The letter said there was one truth he had never told anyone. He placed it on the table. He may have intended to confess privately. Lady Margaret looked at him. Why? To free himself. She began to cry. Poirot did not interrupt. After several moments, she whispered, Sir Julian was not always cruel. Poirot nodded. No. He became cruel because he was afraid. Of what? Of being forgotten. Poirot's expression softened. That explains much. Hastings looked puzzled. Does it explain the murder? No. Then why are we discussing it? Because a murder is rarely about only the moment of death. Poirot picked up the letter. It is about everything that came before. He turned toward the window. Gerald Pike killed Sir Julian because of money. He looked at Lady Margaret. But Sir Julian's life had already become a prison of secrets. He looked at Hastings. The murderer ended his life. Poirot paused. But the secrets continued living. Later that afternoon, Evelyn March returned to Blackwater Hall unexpectedly. She found Poirot in the garden. I received your message. Poirot nodded. I have discovered something. What? The truth about Marianne. Evelyn became pale. I don't want to know. You deserve to. She shook her head. No, Madame, you spent decades believing a falsehood. Then let me keep it. Poirot considered her. You are certain. She looked at the garden. My daughter is dead. Whatever the truth is, it cannot change that. Poirot nodded. You are right. He did not tell her. Some truths, he realized, were not always meant to be weapons. Some were simply wounds with names. That evening, Poirot and Hastings prepared to leave. At the entrance, Lady Margaret stood beside Edward and Clara. Dr. Mercer remained farther away. Nobody spoke. Poirot looked back at Blackwater Hall. The house had witnessed betrayal, love, greed, revenge, and murder. But now the curtains were open. Sunlight filled the corridors. Hastings climbed into the car. Poirot remained outside for another moment. Coming, in a moment, he looked at the house. Then he smiled. The last secret belongs to the dead. Hastings frowned. And what does that mean? Poirot adjusted his hat. It means, mon ami, that not every mystery requires a solution. He entered the car. As they drove away, Blackwater Hall slowly disappeared behind the trees. The murder had been solved. The murderer had been arrested. The masks had fallen. But one final secret remained beneath the silence of the old house, and perhaps that was exactly where it belonged. Chapter 10. The Empty Room. The road from Blackwater Hall stretched beneath a clear evening sky. For the first time in several days, there was no rain. The fields beside the road were bright with the last light of sunset, and the hedges cast long shadows across the lane. Inside the motor car, Hastings sat quietly, watching the countryside disappear behind them. Poirot, however, was not looking outside. He was reading Sir Julian's final letter. He had read it many times, yet something continued to trouble him. Not the murder, that was solved. Not Gerald Pike, that was settled. Something else, something about the final secret. Hastings finally broke the silence. "You are thinking about Marianne." Poirot folded the letter. "Yes. You said we should leave it alone." "I did. And yet," Poirot sighed, "and yet, mon ami, the human mind is a troublesome machine." Hastings smiled. "What have you discovered?" "Nothing. That is unusual." "No, it is merely uncomfortable." Poirot looked out of the window.